So you are a .NET developer and you have this application that's written in React or Angular, and you decide it's much better for you to move over to something like Blazor, and you don't know how? I'm going to quickly show you how to do that. Hi friends, my name is Fani Reinders. Welcome once again to my channel, Fani Live. This is the channel where we dive headfirst into Azure.NET and everything in between, like Blazor Custom Elements. So .NET 7 has been released and it has official support for Blazor Custom Elements, which is part of the ASP.NET Core 7 bits. And to be fair, there's a lot of technologies out there that fits the bill, and I'm not saying that using .NET is always the best thing to do, but it's always the case of looking at a certain problem and solving it the correct way. So imagine you have a team, it's full of .NET developers, and you need to write this wonderful application backend in .NET, and it's awesome, but the front end you're stuck because now you're into React or Angular, or you probably need someone else to do that kind of work. Well, I would say in that case, Blazor WebAssembly would be the better fit. You could also choose for Blazor server-side if you want, but in this case, Blazor WebAssembly is a perfect fit. So the problem here is if you have an application that you have already, let's say it's a React application, and you want to start introducing Blazor very slowly, it is possible by using Blazor Custom Elements. Here we can see a repo of a Blazor Custom Elements that's on the screen, and I will link everything down below in the description. But let me quickly show you how easy it is to create a sample application and slowly introduce Blazor to React. This is a good way of migrating to a Blazor side or maybe using it in hybrid scenarios. Like always, we start off with the terminal. So imagine we have got a scenario where we have a current React application and we want to introduce the Blazor bits, that's probably a new application, into that existing React application. The way to do that is by using Blazor's Custom Elements feature. Now, Custom Elements isn't really a thing. It's more like a browser's thing, but it's a way to wrap the Blazor bits in a usable form. So what I'm about to show you now is not just React specific or Angular specific. It also works in any static website. So you can incorporate this in your blog, for instance. But before we move on, I would like to invite you to subscribe to my channel, hit that little bell icon, and you will be notified the next time I go live once again. And if you want, you can write me something in the comments down below to tell me how much you like my content. So now let's start off with a directory. I want to call this Awesome Blazor. And going into that Awesome Blazor, we want to be able to create a new React application. I'm not a React expert myself, so I kind of Googled this and I found a little sample. Okay, so to create a new React application, one would use something like Create React App. It is a tool that you can install from npm. This takes a while. I already have it installed, so it's very quickly. And the next thing we want to do is actually use that command to create a React application. So in this case, I'm using npx create React app, and I'm going to call it React App. So this takes a while to spawn off initially. So let's give it a while. And we are done. Happy hacking, it says. Eventually we can start the React App. Let's quickly start it to see how it works. So to do that, we're going to go cd React App, and we're going to say npm start. And that should kind of start the React application that we've just spawned up. And like we can see now, it is a simple React application with the React logo spinning, but it is a normal React application, which is the perfect candidate for us to use our custom element bits on. Okay, opening up a new tab and going into a directory, it's time for code. So now to create a Blazor application, one could say .NET new Blazor WASM empty. I don't want to create a new one, like a full-fledged one that's templated. I'm going to create a one that has an empty template that will only contain the bits for the Blazor WASM to start off with. And I'm going to call it, for instance, Awesome Widget. Now that that's done, let's open up code and party. What I'm about to show you is, first of all, we're going to be creating a new custom component. Then we're going to be incorporating that custom component into our React application. You can skip along if you don't want to see the custom component creation and just go to the chapter that's relevant. So here in Visual Studio Code, we see a folder which contains the Awesome Widget Blazor application. and the React app. Now the React app is now running in the background. I'm not going to touch it for now. I'm going to focus now on the Blazor WebAssembly bits. In here, we see it's in a Blazor application, and open up the terminal, and we can actually cd into the awesome Blazor widget and type .NET run, and it will run it in the browser. And it will basically just say hello world, for instance. Okay, closing that down, let's see how we can create a widget in here. Okay, now let's implement a component. So within our awesome widget project, we'll create a new class called awesome timer. We'll call that a razor file. So in here we have a button, and on this button we want to say, for instance, start timer, for instance. And this button we want to say on click. We want to invoke a on click method, like so. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be showing a span. And in here, we want to be saying, for instance, the time, like a text formatted time. Right, so that is it. So a couple of things that we need to do here. So within code, we have a string. We call this, for instance, the time. We'll initialize that to something like 0000, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And then we have a on-click thing that we need to kind of implement. We do that by going void on-click. And we'll say, for instance, the time is now current, but also with, let's say, the milliseconds in there. We're just going to keep it like that. That is it. So let's quickly add this to our page, just for testing purposes. We'll have a awesome timer widget, and close it like that. And when we actually cd into our directory, which is awesome widget, we go .NET run, and let's test it out. Running it, we will then see kind of a hello world application, and when we start it, it now shows the current time with its milliseconds. So every time I click the button, it shows a different time. Let's modify it a bit to be able to, when I click start, it will actually have a countdown timer to kind of run. We do that by actually implementing a timer object. What we do is we have a timer. We'll just call this timer. And when the page gets loaded, it's a protected override on initialized. Let's say a timer is a new timer. And we want to update this thing, for instance, say there's a tick functionality in there. And we want to be able to say, update this every, let's say, every 100 milliseconds, that the timer should tick, right? And very importantly, we need to say, state has changed, to kind of notify the rest of the UI that something has changed within my state. And the tick functionality, I like the way GitHub Copilot just generates these kind of things, which is quite cool. We have the time. And it's now formatted correctly. I don't actually need the state has changed on initialized though. Now we have a timer that ticks. We also now need to have a dispose method, right? So let's implement that dispose method by going public void dispose. Very nicely dispose my timer. So let's run this again to see what has happened. So .NET run, going back here, refreshing. Now we have our timer. Right, and the button doesn't really do anything right now because it just executes the time. Let's change that by showing or hiding the timer. We do that by going to the on-click thing, and let's create a kind of a flag. So when I click the button, the timer shows, and otherwise it hides. So for that, we need a kind of a boolean. So we say bool show timer, and we'll just say that is false. In this case, we can just say, show timer is the opposite of show timer. So it's kind of a toggling effect. And we also now need to also state has changed. We have to notify the rest of the UI that the state has changed. So what we also need to do is now we're going to be creating a little conditional element over here. And we do that by @if. And we say, for instance, show timer. And if timer is supposed to be shown, then I would like this span to kind of render. Otherwise, it should not render at all. Let's run it and see what happens. Going back here, we have hello world start. And when we click start, the timer is shown. And when I click it again, it's hidden. So far, so good. But notice when I click start, the text doesn't change. Let's change that. We do that by basically going in to our timer function. So to do that, we'll create a new public property. We'll say prop, and that is a string, for instance, and let's say, for instance, button text. And the button text should be something like, if the show timer is true, it should say stop, otherwise it should say start. So now incorporating that in here, we'll just say button text, and now that is stop and start. Running it would be reloading and start, stop. That works as planned. So now let's quickly talk about variables. How can you pass a variable into this custom component? Well, we can introduce that by, let's say we have a host and we want to render the host inside of the button. So now let's say, for instance, start or stop the awesomeness from and whatever host it is. So in this case, we'll say, for instance, at host, right? Whatever host I'm running into. And that is, of course, a parameter. And to do a parameter, you need to kind of do a parameter attribute. And that could be a property, and it's a string, and we say this is host. This will expect the host to be passed in. Using this in the actual awesome timer, now we can actually say host is Blazor or whatever. Running it again, we will see start the awesomeness from Blazor. And when we click the button, the timer starts and stops accordingly. So this is awesome stuff. So now let's implement this custom component in our React application. So in order to create a new custom element, we need to add a NuGet package. We do that by going .NET, add package, and it's called Microsoft ASP.NET Core Components Custom Elements. Once that's done, we can go back to our application here and implement it. So we call that builded root components, and we say register custom element. And the name here that we want to register, in this case, it is custom widget. So in this case, it's awesome timer. And the name here is, for instance, just awesome dash timer to kind of be conformed to the HTML spec. This will now register a custom element called awesome timer. And we can test that out by just going to our application. And within this page, we can have another one in here. And we can see how that works. So if we have this razor style, but we can also invoke it as awesome timer. And we, for instance, say not the host is not Blazor in this case, but the host is, for instance, some other host. Running this now, we can see now our current script is loaded, but also the other one is also loaded. So both techniques work. Let's move these bits to React now. So to move these bits to React, we can publish it. So we can say .NET publish. This will now pack everything up nicely and hit it into our publish directory. And when that's done, we can see now under bin publish www root. So in here, we have two folders being created now. We have the content folder and we have the framework folder. Very important that we need to also copy out now. To do that, we take the content folder and the framework folder. We can copy them out. And going to our React application in the public folder here, we'll just stick them in there like so. Now there's a way of now implementing this in React. There's the good way, and there's the hack way, and then there's the proper way. I'm going to go for the hack way. Doing it in the HTML page of your React application all the way down. You're not supposed to be modifying this page, but anyway, YOLO. So now let's say, for instance, we need to reference this script. So it's a script reference. And I believe that we also now need to say the source is whatever that source is. I believe it is. So the source here in this case is a framework, and it's blazor.webassembly.js. This file exists in the framework folder. And we need another one in this case. Otherwise, it kind of doesn't work for some reason, in my case even. So let's create another one, and it is content. So the content one, we need to also reference this JavaScript file there. Right, another one we need to do is the content one. And in this case, the content one is called something different. So it's this module here that we need to incorporate in here. So the module, in this case, it's content, and it's that folder, the ASP.NET Core Components Custom Elements folder. And the name is the custom elements.lib.js. Right, so in hindsight, we have this whole new thing that references the Blazor WebAssembly framework, including your application, and also this custom wrapper thingy that allows us to incorporate custom elements in our application. After a quick save, let's head down to the actual application. So in our source directory in React World, we go to app.js, and in here, we have the actual source code of the React application. Now let's add our little component in here. So let's add our component, let's say here, for instance. We can now say awesome widget or awesome timer in this case. And we'll say the host in this case is, for instance, React. Remember, our application is still running here on localhost 3000. When refreshing that application, we now see a button that says Start the Awesomeness from React. Clicking that button brings my timer back, which is pretty amazing. And this is how easy it is to incorporate Blazor into your React application. So you might be asking, okay, what about bindings? What about React bindings? Let's implement a bind to see how that works. So within our function, let's create a new piece of code here. Let's say we have something like the host, for instance, and we have a function called setHost in here. And in here, we will just define that to use the set state of React. We do, however, need to import React from itself. So we're going to say React from React, like so. Now let's implement a little input field. So we have an input field here. We say type is, for instance, type text. And the value I want to actually bind to the host side of things. And the host would be, when it changes, I want to bind to the setHost function that we just defined there, and that will get the state from the React framework. Then we want to be able to say, well, we want to bind to React that's now currently hard-coded. We want to bind it to whatever host it is in this case. So giving the change value to the custom element in here. I do have a small bug here. I need to say react.useState in there. I do need to remember that also this is not explicit string. This is an actual React binding. So we need to pass the host in as a binding, in this case without the double quotes. After a quick save, going back to our application, we see there's React, and there's our Blazor component, which is a custom element, and we have React. So when we type this, we see it custom binds to the button. The button still works, and it's awesome. It starts and stops, and Bob is your uncle. So this is the way we can have our Blazor application gracefully run in a React application. And like I said, this is not limited to React. You can run this in any static HTML application, Vue, Angular, or whatever. It's a good migration path to introduce .NET gracefully and hopefully in full to your applications. Thank you so much once again for watching this episode. I would like to invite you to subscribe to my channel, and let's create code together. Until next time, folks. Bye-bye.